All right, friends, so we are here to kick off our learning about the American Industrial Revolution. Today we're going to be looking at notes and really looking at that first part of our learning target, and the rest of the week you'll be looking at some notable inventions. But overall, we are working to note the impact of the American Industrial Revolution and some notable inventions from that time period. Of course, make sure that you're pausing and rewinding as you need, so that way you can have appropriate understanding. Please remember that all of the notes are contained within this video, so definitely be pausing to get them down as you go. And on that note, make sure you have something to write on and write with, whether that be your paper notes that you are taking or the digital notes. No matter what, make sure that all of the information contained within the notes document is documented within your notes. All right, let's get started. So again, here are our notes, and then you'll be completing a exit ticket as well. Remember, all of this is below in your Canvas module. All right, so what is the Industrial Revolution? Okay, so the Industrial Revolution is this time period between the late 1700s to 1800s. And we are talking about the American Industrial Revolution. And it's really categorizing when America transferred from an agrarian to a more urbanized society. Okay, what does those words mean, right? Okay, so agrarian means we can think about it as like agriculture, we can think of it as more farming, we can think about it as more rural, okay? So this is how the United States really was up into the Industrial Revolution. Yes, there were still cities, but they were nowhere near as big as the cities that we have now, or even the cities during this period of the Industrial Revolution. And for the most part, it was very agrarian. People did a lot of farming, and they did a lot of cottage industry crafts, which we're about to learn about. And then from the Industrial Revolution, we start to transfer into a more urbanized society. So this, we have that root word of urban, which means city. So we're really starting to have these more larger cityscapes, and more people are living within the cities versus living in more of like the quote country areas. And we have to note that this did begin in England, but we are, for our curriculum, talking about the American Industrial Revolution. But it is also not only that transferring from agrarian to more urbanized, but it's also the cottage industry to a factory system. So the cottage industry, when we think about this, I'm going to go ahead and change my color so that way it's a little bit easier for us. When we think about the cottage industry, this was when stuff was made by hand. And we call it the cottage industry because cottage is another word for house. And it kind of described how, like, if I was a basket weaver, I'd be making baskets by hand in my house. And then people would come buy them from me in my house. Way back when, people made pots by hand. They had to make clay pots by hand. Or the blacksmith had to make them still by hand. So everything was kind of being made by hand, and we could only make one at a time, right? If I'm a basket weaver, and let's say that is my industry, that is how I make my living, I can only make one basket at one time because a basket takes 2 hands to make. So it's a slower process. We get eventually into a factory system, which is kind of what we have today. We can make more than one at a time. And it's just faster, right? Because now I'm starting to use machines and technology to help me, right? I'm no longer just basket weaving myself, making it by hand. Perhaps I am controlling a machine that then weaves that basket for me. And so we kind of note the start of the U.S. Industrial Revolution with Samuel Slater. So Samuel Slater copied, we will say, so things that were going on in England, because again, in England is where the Industrial Revolution kind of really started. And he opened the first industrial mill in Rhode Island in 1790, and it was a cotton mill. And so a lot of clothes were made out of cotton. They are still today, and back then it definitely was. And he utilized a technology that was present in Britain, and it spun cotton thread into yarn more quickly. Now, hear me say, when we're talking about technology, we're not talking about like computers, okay? It's not that time yet, okay? But we are talking about machines. We are talking about, that was terrible writing. About stuff that is steamed powered, and we will talk a little bit more about that. So we are talking about technology like machines and things that increase the speed, but we're not talking about technology like what we have today with like phones and stuff. But it was able to spin this thread into yarn more quickly And therefore, he was able to make more money because he was able to make more yarn, which he could then, the machines would weave into fabric. So what's the impact of this? Well, there was a ton of it. So the first one was on the workforce. So the workforce means the people who are working. So more women started to enter the workforce at this time. And part of that is because the machines did not require as much strength as before. You have to think about not only did women have to stay home and take care of children, because that was how the world was. If you having to, let's say, cut down a tree, like that takes a lot of strength. That takes a lot of stuff that you have to put forth. And so more women started to join the workforce. Unfortunately, also, this is when we had a really big child labor problem, which is illegal. Now it is, but a lot of children were entering the workforce as well. And this was mostly because there was a more urban workforce, and wages, how much they got paid, was not that great, okay? This was kind of before the time of like how we have labor laws now. And so for families to have enough money for the things that they needed, a lot of times the children would go into the workforce as well. And again, it was less agrarian. We've talked about that. It also impacted immigration because there was a greater number of immigrants that traveled to America. And it was really because of this pull factor of jobs and opportunity. So when there was more factories opening, when the United States became more industrial, it opened up a lot more job opportunities, and therefore people could get paid. And so there was that pull of opportunity, especially if you were coming from a place that had famine, which is lack of food, war, lack of jobs. It was a big, big pull factor. All right, let's look at two notable inventions, and then we will wrap this up. So the first one we want to talk about is the cotton gin. The cotton gin was invented by Eli Whitney, and it separated the cotton seeds from the cotton. This was huge because it did it 50 times faster than when the process was done by hand. So like it was greatly increased the amount of cotton that could be processed. However, because the cotton could be processed much faster, that meant it could be sold to textile mills much quicker, which meant that there was an increased demand for cotton because everything was revolving around money, right? I want to sell as much cotton as I can because then I will make more money. And then the mills want to buy the cotton as quickly as they can because then they can make it into clothes and cloth, and then they can make more money. So because of this, there was an increased demand for cotton. And because of that, this in turn expanded plantations and also enslaved labor. So the cotton gin was a huge factor in the fact that enslaved labor was growing at this time. Remember, this is right before the Civil War, and we're going to learn about the Civil War in fourth quarter in detail. Because this increase for cotton, there was this increased need and want for cotton. Another very notable invention is steam power. So steam power was used in factories and in trains. We talked about the steam engine earlier this year. And because it was able to do things quicker, or it powered the machines that could do things quicker, goods were able to be created faster. And then with the train, it could be transported quicker. I'm no longer having to load up all of these baskets in the back of a wagon and then walk with the horse into town. I can just put them on a train and it gets there much, much faster. So that decreased the cost of transportation goods, and then it was therefore increasing profits. All right, go ahead and progress to the assignment for this lesson. Make sure that all of your graphic organizer notes have been filled out. You might need to rewind as you need, and then turn in your exit ticket. Remember, you're not turning in your notes, but you're using them to do your exit ticket in Canvas. Let me know how I can help.